Alright, global students, this is our last episode in our global history Regents review series. Let's knock it out. Alright, a topic I can guarantee you will be on your Regents exam is going to be the transition of the Ottoman Empire dissolving and the new country of Turkey, and what type of government and society and culture Turkey will create under its new leader, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. So, the Ottoman Empire in World War I sided with Germany. They lost. Ottoman Empire went poof. And they're going to have a new country called Turkey. Its leader, just know him as Ataturk. And his goal is to turn the Turkish government into a secular government. The Ottoman Empire was not secular. It infused Islamic law into its government. Ataturk wants to make a secular government, non-religious. You need to know the word secular. Your teachers expect you to know that by high school. Let's go. All right. So, Ataturk is going to now force this secular culture onto Turkey. So look at all these reforms. Under the Ottoman Empire, women were placed well below men, and he is going to officially make them politically equal to men. They can vote. They can hold political office. Additionally, he is going to remove the Arabic alphabet from Turkey's government completely. He's going to make a Turkish alphabet. He basically uses Latin letters with the spoken Turkish language. Again, that's a huge cultural change. He is trying to, what? Modernize Turkey. If you see a question about Ataturk, the answer is usually modernize and westernize Turkey. They sometimes compare him to Emperor Meiji in Japan, who tried to modernize, westernize, and industrialize Japan. All right. So, overall, his reforms did in fact work, and Turkey became a modernized state. All right, next is Iran. So, now we're going to see a kind of the opposite. Iran will be a modernized and fairly westernized country, and then there will actually be a reaction against it. This will also lead to the Iranian Revolution in 1979. All right, so the guy who will modernize and westernize Iran was the Shah. He basically became buddy-buddy with the United States because the United States had a lot of interest in Iranian oil. He made women, politically equal to men. But these reforms are not exactly popular in Iran. And especially, Iranians believe that he was a puppet. He was corrupted by the United States. So there's going to be a growing resistance against him. And this resistance is going to be led by the various Islamic religions in Iran, and predominantly Shia Muslims. So the Shah is going to experience this resistance from Islamic fundamentalists. Remember, a fundamentalist, they believe in an original, a basic interpretation of something. So now you have a group of people who believe that whatever is written in the Quran should be the law of the country, and they inherently are going to reject this modernized and westernized society. So they're going to begin this revolution, and it happens fast. Iran overthrows the Shah quick, to the point where the CIA didn't expect it to happen that fast. So the new leader of Iran is the top religious leader of Shia Muslims in Iran, and his name was Khomeini. He gets this title called the Ayatollah, the supreme leader. And the Shah is gone, and Iran has a new government. And look at what type of government the Ayatollah creates. He creates a legit theocracy. A theocracy is a government run by religious leaders. He places himself as the supreme leader. And yes, Iran has a president that they elect, but the supreme leader, to the very day, controls who can run for those elections in the first place. So they still have a theocracy to the very day, as I recorded this in 2023. All right, so major topic, almost always gets a question on the Regents. It's also a confusing one, is the Arab-Israeli conflict, also known as the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. So first and foremost, no, Arabs are a huge ethnic group in North Africa, in the Middle East. And additionally, Palestinians are like a more specific version of Arabs. So Palestinians are Arabs, but they live in Palestine, which today is controlled by Israel. And Israel is going to be predominantly made up of Jews. Predominantly, not all. Okay, so with the Arab-Israeli conflict, we have to talk about the importance of this land called Palestine. So let's go all the way back, 3,000 years ago. So the descendants of the father of Judaism, Abraham, settled in this area called Canaan, or Palestine for us. They settled there 3,000 years ago. Then the Roman Empire comes in, they start persecuting those Jews, and those Jews flee. They flee mostly to Eastern Europe. It's called the First Jewish Diaspora. So once the Jews are gone, then Arabs start settling in this region between the 4th and 7th centuries, and it really kicks up once you have the growth of Islam by the 600 AD, 700 AD. So Arabs have consistently lived in this region called Palestine for the last 1,400 years, and then this conflict will really actually occur once we get into the 20th century. So what starts happening in the 20th century is this growth of Jewish nationalism called Zionism. The idea that Jews should have a country outside of Europe to escape persecution. The British government then declared its support for this idea of a Jewish state or Jewish country in the region of Palestine, although they did qualify it and said as long as there's no prejudice against the existing non-Jewish population, they're referring to Palestinians or Arabs. And then Jewish immigration starts increasing after this Balfour Declaration. But what really is the kicker here is the Holocaust. So by 1945, World War II has ended. A third of Europe's Jews have been murdered. And now the calls for a Jewish state in the region of Palestine dramatically increased. Most Jews after the Holocaust went to two places. One, the United States, but two, in much larger numbers, was Palestine. And we're now talking 3 years between 1945 and now 1948. Israel's proclaimed a country for Jews, predominantly for Jews, I should say. So what happens right then and there is there's initially a war between Jews and Palestinians. I actually should say Arabs, because surrounding Arab countries like Egypt, Jordan, Syria all invade Israel, but Israel beats all of them and starts taking over more and more land. There is going to be a series of wars in this time period. One of the more important ones is called the Six-Day War in 1967, where Egypt, again an Arab country, is going to block Israel's access to the Red Sea. The Red Sea is really important for trading reasons, so Israel is forced to attack. And when Israel does, they take over a ton of Arab land and dramatically increase the size of Israel. So this was the size of Israel in blue before the Six-Day War. And then after the Six-Day War, Israel gained everything you see in red as well. So Israel is now taken over all of Jerusalem. They've taken over this infamous area called the Gaza Strip. They've taken over the Golan Heights from Syria. So Israel is now a much larger country than what it was before. So basically, Israel controls much more historically Arab land. Okay, so then the United States is getting involved. So because of this violence in Israel and Palestinian areas, the United States wants to broker some type of peace agreement between Arab states and Israel. So the Camp David Accords are the very first political agreement between an Arab country and Israel, and this one was between Egypt and Israel. And basically what it does is it just decreases tension. It'll eventually lead to other political agreements, but it is an important potential turning point in this conflict. So a nationalist organization to know in this Arab-Israeli conflict is the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO. And the PLO has a very simple goal: have a country for Palestinians in this region of Palestine alongside Israel. And then depending on the year, there was some cases where Palestinians would argue that they should only have a Palestinian state and not a Jewish state called Israel. But overall, most of the PLO says it should be 2 states. So one way the resistance will increase is during these what they call intifadas. So intifada in Arabic means uprising, where Palestinians start protesting the Israeli occupation of their territory, and Palestinians aren't terribly well armed compared to the Israeli military. So in some cases, they might use suicide bombings, therefore terrorism. They do have limited access to small arms, some rockets that they'll shoot at Israel. But overall, a lot of it's often very basic, including like throwing stones at Israeli soldiers. And basically, when these uprisings occur, the Israeli military crushes with overwhelming force these intifadas, and it leads to hundreds, if sometimes thousands of deaths on the Palestinian side, some deaths on the Israeli side, but it's always overwhelming force. The Israeli military is funded by the U.S., and Israel also has nuclear weapons. They have one of the best militaries in the world, especially for their size. Again, I'm leaving out a lot of stuff for the sake of review, but basically the setup of this conflict today, Israel and then Palestinian territories, is basically Palestinians have autonomy, some self-rule over these areas that you see in green. So basically it's some parts of the West Bank of the Jordan River is what they call the West Bank, and then pretty much most of the Gaza Strip. But what's been happening since 1967 is Israel has been occupying more and more Palestinian territory, especially in the West Bank. So you see these little Israeli settlements. They're kind of like these developments that are completely surrounded with barbed wire, Israeli soldiers protecting them. And what they're basically doing is they are gradually taking away Palestinian land over a long period of time. So when you look at maps of how much territory Palestinians actually control, it decreases pretty significantly from 1948 to the present day. So overall, the major question in this conflict is, can there be a 2-state solution? Can there be 2 countries in this region? A country called Israel, predominantly for Jews, and a country called Palestine, predominantly for Arabs. Well, right now in 2023, it's not looking terribly popular at the moment. Again, radicalism on both the Israeli side and the Palestinian side are frankly the most popular right now, especially with the leadership of their 2 groups. And again, as it occurs in 2023, we're probably as far as possible from creating a 2-state solution. So this is one of these areas that I'm very curious what will happen in the next 20, 25 years. So keep this in the back of your mind as a citizen of the world. Okay, so to end this last episode of our review series is what I call modern-ish issues, major, really, human rights violations that have occurred in the last 50-ish years. So let's start with, I believe, we should talk about the UN Declaration of Human Rights again. So I believe I started Global this year with some type of discussion about the UN Declaration of Human Rights. So the Holocaust is like this turning point that the world needs to define what human rights are. So 3 years after the end of World War II, the United Nations creates a universal declaration of human rights. And it says, here are the rights of all human beings, regardless of sex, race, religion, etc., etc. And just to summarize the major ones: no slavery, no discrimination of any kind. You can't be arrested without a reason. You have the right to life, liberty, and security. And the reason I start with this is we're going to see plenty of countries revoke these rights or attack these rights outright after 1948. For example, 1994, the Rwandan Genocide. So Rwanda is a country in Central Africa, and it was a colony of Belgium. And Belgium kind of split the country into 2 ethnic groups. And the 2 ethnic groups were the Tutsis and the Hutus. And the Belgians were a minority. They weren't the majority of the population. But the Belgians preferred them and gave them more privileges in the government, at least when Belgium controlled it. Well, after independence in 1962, the Hutus took back power, and they gradually start this process of making Hutu control of Rwanda. So that will eventually lead to planning of an extermination of the Tutsis, a genocide. So 1994, in April, the Hutus began murdering Tutsis in incredible numbers. If you actually look at the kill rate day by day, it was actually more than the Holocaust. And the primary weapon of the Hutus killing the Tutsis were mostly machetes. Again, some rifles, some machine guns. But overall, they were killing them with machetes. And every part of Hutu society was expected to do this. Many obviously didn't, but they were expected to. And they call this the 100-day genocide because in 100 days, the Hutus kill about 1 million Tutsis and also Hutu resistors who disagreed with the genocide. So overall, Rwanda lost 20% of its population in 100 days. 100 days, 20% of their population. And the United Nations, this is where they really get a bad rap. They overall didn't really step in. And, I'm not entirely sure the United Nations has the ability to do that, but they did have UN peacekeepers in there, and they were called off. They weren't there to protect the Tutsis. They were really there to actually protect Western interests there, more or less. So, again, our major takeaway is, yes, the UN Declaration of Human Rights is an incredible moment. It defines human rights, but clearly there will be examples of genocide and human rights abuses afterwards, unfortunately. And there are, unfortunately, still genocides occurring to the very day, as I explained this in 2023. All right, so thank you for listening to this series. I wish you the absolute best of luck on your Global History Regents exam. You got this. You will do well. Let me know if you have any additional questions. I'll see you later. Ciao, ragazzi.